Welcome to my channel. Today's story is about a woman who endured years of silence, pain, and control until one night everything changed. Her husband threw a glass at her. She didn't scream. She didn't fight back. Instead, she cleaned the blood and set the table for breakfast. And when he came downstairs smiling, expecting obedience, he found a police officer waiting in his chair. Stay until the end. Justice arrives in a way you'll never forget. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories of strength and survival. The clock on the kitchen wall read 11:47 p.m. The house was silent, except for the steady drip of water from the faucet and the echo of Hannah Carter's heartbeat pounding inside her ears. She stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, hands trembling as she wiped the kitchen counter. Her breath was shallow, controlled, like someone trying not to make a sound that would wake a beast. The overhead light flickered, casting fractured shadows against the floral wallpaper she once chose with such hope. Behind her, footsteps thundered down the stairs. Ethan, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Are you deaf, Hannah?" He snarled. "I asked you a question." She didn't turn around. She didn't dare. She could smell the whiskey on his breath before he even entered the room. "I'm sorry," she whispered, reaching for a towel as her hand shook. "I didn't hear you." But Ethan was never looking for an apology. He was looking for control. Glass shattered against the wall beside her, sharp, violent, explosive. A wine glass, thrown with such force that pieces rained across the floor like crystal hailstones. One sharp edge sliced across her eyebrow, and she gasped as warm blood trickled down her cheek. Ethan stepped closer, towering over her, chest heaving. "You're useless," he spat. "You can't even answer a simple question." "Look at you, pathetic." Hannah squeezed her eyes shut, not from the pain, but from the familiar humiliation burning inside her. She had been here before, too many times. Somehow, every time, she still hoped he might stop. But tonight, something shifted. Not because he hurt her, he always hurt her, but because of the look in his eyes, empty, cold, capable of anything. For a moment, she thought he might kill her. Then, as quickly as it exploded, the rage drained from him. He scoffed and turned away, wiping his hands on his shirt. "I'm going to bed," he muttered. "Clean this mess. And don't wake me." His footsteps faded up the stairs. A door slammed shut. Hannah remained frozen, staring at the floor, the broken glass glittering like shattered stars around her feet. Droplets of blood staining the tile. She exhaled slowly, shakily. And then everything inside her went still. No screaming. No sobbing. No begging. Just silence. A silence that felt strangely powerful. She moved mechanically, retrieving a cloth and kneeling to clean the blood. She picked up the shards carefully, placing each into a plastic bag. The motion was slow, deliberate, methodical. Every action was recorded in her mind with perfect clarity. When the kitchen was spotless again, she walked to the bathroom, cleaned the cut, and applied a small bandage. She stared at her reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, bruised. But behind the bruises, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Resolve. She walked to the pantry and pulled out ingredients: flour, eggs, fresh berries. The soft whisking sound filled the empty kitchen as she prepared Ethan's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with honey. At midnight, she set the dining table, carefully cloth napkins, polished silverware, fruit bowl centerpiece. Everything perfect, delicate, calm. Like a stage scene, a trap waiting for its actor. She wiped her hands, went to her bedroom, and reached under her pillow. She took out her phone, the one he believed he had smashed weeks ago. He forgot. Hannah always kept backups. She opened the voice recording app and pressed record. Then she scrolled to a contact labeled TM and hit call. The phone rang. Once. Twice. A quiet voice answered. "Hannah?" Hannah swallowed hard, her voice barely more than a breath. Tara, it's time. Morning crept slowly across the sky, painting soft streaks of orange and gold through the kitchen windows. The house that once felt like a prison was eerily calm, almost peaceful, but beneath that silence lived a storm preparing to break. Hannah stood at the kitchen counter, pouring freshly brewed coffee into 3 mugs. Her hands were steady now, her breathing deep and even. The faint smell of blueberry pancakes filled the air, mixing strangely with the lingering scent of last night's violence. She heard a knock, soft, measured, deliberate, the signal. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked to the front door. Through the peephole, she saw them, Tara Mitchell, her best friend since childhood, eyes fierce with determination. And next to her, wearing a dark police jacket, stood Officer Jordan Lee, his expression serious yet compassionate, his posture steady like someone who had seen too many stories like this and refused to let another end tragically. Hannah opened the door. Tara immediately pulled her into a gentle embrace, careful not to touch the injuries. Hannah. Oh my God. Tara whispered, eyes filling with tears. I should have come sooner. I'm so sorry. Hannah shook her head. No, you're here now. That's what matters. Officer Lee stepped inside, nodding respectfully. Mrs. Carter, I'm Officer Jordan Lee. I specialize in domestic abuse and felony assault cases. Tara told me everything she could. Are you ready to move forward? Hannah inhaled slowly. Yes, I am. Before we begin, he said calmly, I need to document the scene from last night. Is the injury visible? Hannah removed the small bandage. A dark swollen bruise surrounded a deep cut near her eyebrow. Tara gasped, covering her mouth. Officer Lee took photographs, wide shots, close-ups, time-stamped, documented professionally. Then he knelt to inspect the plastic bag Hannah had filled with broken glass. You preserved the evidence perfectly, he said. This is strong material. Good thinking. Asterisk Hannah nodded, her voice steady. I started recording last night too. I sent copies to Tara in case anything happened. Tara held up her phone. All saved. Multiple backups? Officer Lee gave a rare, approving smile. That's excellent. People rarely manage to gather proof under this level of trauma. You're stronger than you know. Hannah looked down, voice trembling not from fear, but from something returning, belief. I'm tired of surviving, she whispered. I'm ready to live. By early afternoon, Hannah sat in a quiet private office. Soft sunlight streamed through large windows, and framed certificates lined the wall behind an elegant wooden desk. Across from her sat Rowan Hall, one of the top domestic litigation attorneys in the city. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and unflinchingly direct. Rowan leaned forward. I reviewed everything Officer Lee sent me. Hannah, what you endured is not just abuse, it's attempted coercive control, psychological confinement, and felony-level physical assault. We can and will prosecute this. Hannah swallowed. What happens now? Rowan slid a stack of documents across the desk. This is the start of your new life. Emergency restraining order request, divorce filing, property freeze petition, and temporary sole rights to all joint financial accounts. Once he is arrested, he will not be allowed to come near you. Tara squeezed Hannah's hand for support. Rowan continued. We need witnesses. Do you know anyone who might speak up? Hannah nodded slowly. The neighbors. They often heard yelling. And the hospital there are records of untreated injuries? Rowan smiled slightly. Good. We'll subpoena everything. Then she added quietly, we're going to take back your power piece by piece. Later that evening, Hannah returned home. She moved through the house like someone preparing a stage. The table was fully set, the coffee still warm, pancakes stacked beautifully beneath a silver lid. Everything perfect and calm. Tara adjusted a small wireless audio recorder hidden inside a ceramic fruit bowl. "It'll catch every word," she said confidently. Officer Lee waited discreetly outside, ready to re-enter the moment Hannah gave the signal. Hannah looked up the staircase. Any second now, Ethan would wake. Any second now, the man who controlled her life would walk into this room believing nothing had changed, but everything had. For the first time in years, Hannah felt something expand inside her chest, not fear, but strength. Tara placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." Hannah offered a small, steady smile. "No," she said softly. "I'm not." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Footsteps moved toward the staircase. The monster was waking. Hannah stood tall, shoulders back, heartbeat steady. Asterisk. When Ethan stepped into the kitchen, he would find breakfast waiting, the table beautifully set, sunlight warm across the room in his chair. Sipping coffee calmly, Officer Jordan Lee. The stairs creaked with each slow, heavy step, Ethan descending like a king entering his kingdom. Hannah stood perfectly still, hands loosely folded in front of her, spine straight, expression calm. She could feel Tara watching from the hallway. Silent and ready. Ethan appeared in the doorway wearing his usual morning smirk, stretching lazily. "Well, well," he said with a mocking grin, inhaling the scent of warm pancakes. "Looks like someone finally remembered how to be a wife." His voice was syrup sweet, sickening. He stepped closer, brushing past Hannah without looking at her like she was furniture, not human. He sat down in his usual chair, reaching for the silver lid covering the pancakes. A moment he lifted it. He froze, because it wasn't Hannah sitting across from him. It was Officer Jordan Lee, calm and composed, sipping coffee from one of the polished white mugs. Ethan's smile twitched. What is this?" he stammered, confused. "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" Officer Lee set his cup down gently, his eyes unwavering. "I'm Officer Jordan Lee. I'm here regarding multiple reports and evidence of domestic violence and assault. We need to have a conversation." Ethan's expression hardened instantly, his voice rising. "There's been a mistake. My wife is emotional. She exaggerates. We had a small disagreement last night, nothing serious." Hannah stepped forward now, her voice soft but razor-edged. "You threw a glass at my face." Ethan laughed coldly without turning toward her. "You see? Dramatic. She bumps into a counter and suddenly she's calling the police." Tara stepped into the room, holding her phone. "Then explain this," she said, and pressed play. Ethan's voice echoed from the speaker, loud and undeniable. "If you don't shut up, I'll make sure you can't speak again. Do you hear me? I'll put you in the hospital and no one will believe you." The recording continued, rage, threats, profanity, and the sound of impact echoing through the kitchen. Ethan's face went pale. That's taken out of context," he snapped. "You tricked me? This is illegal. Spying in your own home." Officer Lee cut him off. "We also have photographic evidence of injuries, medical reports, statements from witnesses, and preserved physical evidence from last night. And the bandage on your wife's forehead is visible right now." Ethan slammed his fist onto the table, silverware rattling. "This is ridiculous. Hannah, stop this right now before you ruin everything." Hannah met his eyes, calm, steady, unshaking. "You already ruined everything." For the first time, Ethan's bravado cracked. His voice wavered, almost pleading. "Hannah, baby, please. You don't have to do this. We can fix things. I was stressed. You know, I love you." Hannah stepped closer, just enough so he could see the small scar above her eyebrow. "You don't hurt someone you love," she said quietly. This wasn't love. It was ownership. Ethan looked at Officer Lee in desperation. "You can't arrest me without a warrant." Officer Lee calmly pulled papers from his jacket and placed them on the table. Signed early this morning. Based on assault causing bodily harm, coercive control, and documented history of abuse. Ethan shot out of his chair, knocking it over. This is a setup. I'll destroy you, Hannah. You're nothing without me. But he didn't get another word out. 2 more officers entered from outside and seized his arms, cuffing him tightly as he thrashed and cursed. Tara stepped protectively in front of Hannah. Ethan screamed, face twisted in rage and humiliation as neighbors appeared at their windows. Watching him dragged to the police car, "You think you've won?" He shouted. "This is not over." Hannah didn't flinch. She took one slow, steady breath and closed the front door behind him. The silence that followed was different from any silence she had ever known. Not suffocating, not fearful. Peaceful. Officer Lee turned to her, voice warm but firm. "You did something incredibly brave today. Most never get to this point alive. You saved yourself." Tara wrapped her arms around her in a tight, trembling hug. Hannah's voice cracked for the first time, but not from fear, from relief. "It's over," she breathed. For the first time in years, it's finally over. 3 weeks later, the courthouse was buzzing with quiet tension. Reporters and onlookers filled the corridor, whispers echoing off the polished marble floors. Domestic violence cases rarely drew attention, but something about this one had gripped the community. Maybe it was because the neighbors had witnessed the arrest. Maybe because the evidence was overwhelming. Or maybe because people love seeing a monster finally brought into the light. Hannah stood just outside the courtroom doors, hands clasped gently around a folder filled with evidence. Tara stood on one side, steady and supportive. On the other, attorney Rowan Hawley, sharp and composed, reviewed the final documents. "You ready?" Rowan asked softly. Hannah nodded. For the first time, yes. They walked inside. Ethan sat at the defense table wearing a rumpled suit, wrists still red from the cuffs he'd fought against the day of his arrest. The arrogance he once wore like armor had vanished. His face looked hollow, eyes bloodshot, jaw tense. He refused to look at Hannah. Judge Elias Bennett, calm and stern, entered the courtroom and took his seat. Court is in session. The prosecution laid out everything clearly and methodically. Photographs of Hannah's injurious medical records documenting untreated wounds were in statements from neighbors' audio. Recordings of threats, the shattered glass presented as physical. Evidence, a documented pattern of psychological and emotional abuse of voice recordings exposing manipulation, cruelty, and control as the final piece of audio played. Ethan screaming that he would make sure she couldn't speak again. The courtroom went still. Someone in the back quietly sobbed. Rowan stood and spoke with unwavering clarity. What happened to Hannah Carter is not an accident. It is not a misunderstanding. It is abuse, calculated and deliberate. And today, we are here to make sure she never has to fear him again. Judge Bennett looked toward Hannah. Double quotes, "Mrs. Carter, would you like to speak before sentencing?" Hannah stood, exhaling slowly as she walked to the center of the room. Every step felt like reclaiming her life. She placed her hands gently on the podium and spoke without shaking. "For years, I believed I deserved what happened to me. I believed that staying quiet made me strong. I was wrong." She paused, breath steady. Strength isn't surviving abuse in silence. Strength is walking away and refusing to return. She looked directly at Ethan for the first time. "You didn't break me. You just taught me exactly who I never want to be." Rowan rested a supportive hand on her shoulder as she returned to her seat. Judge Bennett cleared his throat. "Ethan Carter, you are hereby sentenced to 6 years in state prison, mandatory anger management counseling, and a permanent restraining order. You will have no contact with Hannah Carter for the remainder of your life. Court is adjourned." The gavel struck. Applause erupted across the room. Ethan's face crumpled with rage and disbelief as officers pulled him up and led him away in chains. He looked back at Hannah one last time, eyes burning. But Hannah didn't see a monster anymore. She saw a closed door, and behind her, an open future. 1 year later, sunlight streamed through the windows of a cozy art studio. Bright canvases covered the walls, paintings full of color, life, and movement. Hannah stood at the easel, brush gliding confidently across the canvas. A soft smile on her face, she no longer flinched at loud noises. No longer apologized for taking up space. No longer lived inside fear. Tara entered carrying 2 coffees. "You have another full class today," she said proudly. "You're changing lives, you know." Hannah smiled gently. "I'm just hoping others find the strength they already have." On the wall hung a framed photograph. Hannah surrounded by women from her support group survivors. Fighter sisters. She picked up a fresh brush, dipped it in bright yellow paint, and whispered to herself, "I survived. I'm free." The studio filled with laughter and sunlight, the sound of life returning. Outside, the world moved on. And Hannah stepped forward into a future that finally belonged to her.